This week, we're talking about how gardens and gardening can benefit us physically, mentally, and spiritually. But of course, that is a two-way relationship. In order that we can enjoy all the benefits of the natural world, we have to look after it, and not just for our own pleasure. In fact, we need to care for it for its very survival. In tonight's programme, we're going to be looking at the different ways we can do this, how we can welcome the natural world into our gardens and create the habitats where it can thrive, how we can make the soil really healthy as this basis for life, and also how it doesn't matter how small our gardens are, how we can do modest things in our backyards that have a real impact in the world at large. And at the same time, how we can create beautiful gardens that we can all enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to Chelsea. You just love sneaking off those little moments, don't you, Monty?
I tell you what, early in the morning, which that was.
Oh, lovely.
It's lovely. It's the great privilege you and I have of coming into Chelsea, sometimes as early as sort of 6 in the morning, and seeing it without too many people, and also having a chance to revisit things, re-see. But the wildlife theme is something that you and I have known been going on for quite a long time now.
But it has changed a lot over the time that I've been gardening. People spray everything and you know, lots of hard landscaping. I think things are really changing in gardening and garden design as well.
The spiritual element, this idea of gardens that can heal, the fact that we can talk openly about mental health, that is a new and, to my mind, a very welcome.
Yeah, and I think anyone who has gardened, knows it. I always say it's good for one's soul.
Yeah, you're right. Gardeners do know what's going on.
Yeah. Now on with the show. There's all sorts of inspiration here to help us nurture biodiversity in our gardens.
It certainly is indeed. And here's what's coming up on the RHS Chelsea Flower Show, an event supported by the Newt in Somerset.
Monty will be chatting with designer Jasper Conran about his wild and wonderful Dorset garden.
Arit Anderson visits the Great Pavilion to find out how the talented florists there are using their art to highlight some of the really big issues facing the planet.
And Monty and I will be taking a closer look at the Rewilding Britain garden, which won the show's top prize and was described by RHS judges as charming and exquisite.
But first, Francis has been finding out how 2 more gardens have created a haven for wildlife.
This is the J-Day balcony, and it's really crammed with different bits of habitat all over it and filled with loads of ideas of ways that you can bring wildlife into the garden. But as this is the Chelsea Flower Show, the most important thing to talk about is the plants. And here, what they're really encouraging people to do is grow seed plants rather than just put seed out on a bird table. So there's sunflowers here, there's teasels, and there's also nectar-rich plants, things like crimson clover. And the idea is that as well as having seed for birds, you're also creating a little ecosystem here with the planting, and that will be ground cover for things like ground beetles and all sorts of helpful insects. So that's a really lovely idea, and it just looks so much nicer than a table with some sunflower seeds on it, doesn't it? One of the cleverest ideas on this balcony is using the whole floor space as potential for habitat. It's got a raised kind of mesh, and underneath it everything's planted, mostly with mosses, which is really useful for nesting birds. They can come and take that moss and use it to build their nests, but also with pollen-rich planting and really tiny, delicate planting. But there's things like Nepeta here, there's geums, and there are bees flying around them already. So it's really, really clever use of space. Now, where the balcony was created with the birds at its heart, this garden is all about the bees. And in a bigger space, you have a chance to create bigger features. There's a large body of water, there's lots and lots of planting, and there's lots of big trees as well. So you're really able to maximise that habitat potential. This structure here is a beehive, but not like an ordinary beehive which caters for honeybees. It's one of the only 2 species of bee in the UK which lives in a colony. In fact, more than 250 species of bee are solitary, and they do a huge amount of pollination, so they're really important and we need to cater for them. And that's what this does, and it's a really beautiful structure. It has lots of features, so this mushroom shape on the top not only protects those entrance points from falling rain, but also gives a tiny little film of water on the top, which is safe for bees to drink from without falling in and drowning, which is really important. In terms of the plants themselves, then if you want to attract bees, think about blues and purples, because they're the colours they can see best. So here we have things like salvias, there's nepetas, there's honesty, and there's geraniums, and they're all things that bees will be able to see really easily and land on and get that nectar. So if you provide them with food, you provide them with shelter, and hopefully you provide bees with everything they need to survive in your garden.
Now, No Garden epitomises the relationship between people and nature, like the Rewilding Britain Garden, which not only won a gold medal for first-time designers Lulu Urquhart and Adam Hunt, but was also named the best show garden.
There is lots to love on this.
There is.
I mean, it's beautifully done. I love this bottom meadow.
Yeah.
You know, you have this riparian meadow, means it's damp ground. And of course, in damp ground, you have a completely different set of wildflowers that you do in dry ground. So immediately you've got complexity coming in.
The little orchid and the water flow.
Beautiful.
And I love these boardwalks across, leading you up and through.
the
change of levels. It's great.
And this, which essentially is a border, that looks and feels very natural. And that sort of is the crux of this garden, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it looks like it could have just self-seeded itself, but we know someone's been planting it meticulously.
Beautiful shed. And the stones. I mean, I think the crucial thing that we need to stress right from the outset is whatever kind of garden you have, however big, however small, there are things here you can take from it.
Yeah, certainly.
You know,
I mean, the wall at the back, the detailing in that wall.
And just make, you know, the way the stones are done, the water, you could make water like this in a small garden. Yeah. The planting is fantastic.
Beautiful.
But
there's a big butt coming on. I know when there's a big butt coming on.
Okay. What I would say is there are 2 things that bother me about this garden. One, is it a garden?
Yep. No, I don't think it is.
And I think with the beavers,
it will be less of a garden.
Well, if you took the beavers out, I think it would be much better.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't need the beavers.
If you put beavers in, they're going to wreck this space in minutes.
I think they've built an idea and a sort of polemic around beavers.
Yeah.
And that stops it being a garden.
Yeah.
And 2, rewilding is a really unhelpful term when it comes to gardening.
I agree. People ask me, how can I rewild my 50-foot garden in Hackney?
Yeah.
And the answer is, you can't. You can make it wilder, more naturalistic, more biodiverse, and all those things that gardeners do to manipulate the space that they've got. But to recreate nature completely in a garden is impossible,
also,
really.
I think, you know, rewilding means not interfering, not having the hand of man on it at all.
Yeah.
This is a really good example in many ways of man working with nature, of manipulating, of choosing and of tending. And, you know, make a hay meadow, you cut the hay, you graze it, you gather it.
Yeah.
But you can't have it both ways. You can't rewild. What we all want is nature celebrated.
And I think that's the great thing, is that gardeners are now much more aware of nature, habitats, and encouraging wildlife in. And we all do it in different ways. And this is encouraging us to do it. And
also getting beavers in our garden.
Like, well, you know, there's species of plants here, and the things like the stepping stones, and just manipulating the space to make it work for humans.
I think we have to stress, I think this is a brilliant show garden.
Yeah.
I think it absolutely deserves a gold medal. I think they have done fantastic work, and it's inspirational, and everybody will love it.
Yeah.
And the only thing I worry about is the beaver thing is totally out of any kind of garden context, and you're encouraging people to so-called rewild, whereas actually we want to work, man and nature have to work together to create a garden. Yeah. It's a relationship.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think this and you know what, this is great, having a debate about this.
Well, it's going to run on.
And this garden has stimulated that debate as well as all the other gardens here at Chelsea. Well, every year at Chelsea, The floristry competitors create spectacular designs within themes set out by the RHS. This year, those themes were all about celebrating nature and being kind to the planet. Arvid Anderson's been to find out how the floral designers have risen to the challenge.
The broad theme this year is the roots of life, celebrating what we eat and what we breathe. Hi, Anya.
Hi, hello.
This is stunning. It's so gorgeous.
Thank you.
I really want to hear about the inspiration behind it.
Well, we've really tried to tell a story here about nature's ability to disrupt our life by roots coming out of the ground and upending this table and throwing everything all over the place.
What sustainable methods have you used to keep everything in place?
We've used recyclable materials where we could, really as much as possible. These cups are actually stuck on with a vegetable-based glue. So it is a completely sustainable method. We've been using a volcanic rock wool product to hold the flowers in place.
Yeah.
These are mounted on the table, and then we use these really nice vines to cage them in to try and give us a bit of a structure so that we could mount the flowers on.
Where do you source your flowers from?
So we try and source flowers as close and as local as possible. Actually, we've got quite some few nice British flowers in here, including those really nice dianthus just over there in hot pink.
Well, it's so inspirational what you've done here, so it's amazing.
Thank you so much, that's really kind, thank you.
It's long been accepted that trees are so vital for our well-being and the environment. And here, a designer has created an installation of an ancient tree in an old meadow. And that's to remind us that man-made buildings mustn't encroach on our open green spaces. This is stunning, I have to say, Stephen. Tell me, how have you managed to keep this staying up?
Well, it's a lot of mechanics, clever mechanics, because as you know, we're not allowed to use floral foam anymore. So it's got a metal structure. It even has yogurt pots, soup cartons, everything that will give you the shape to hold the flower in water.
Well, the illusion has worked. It looks brilliant. I'm really interested to hear where the inspiration for this come from.
I was in Costa Rica and we decided to go to a rainforest. It was just mind-blowing. We just came back and just felt that we'd kind of seen something special.
What's the key message you want visitors to go away with?
I'd love people to just see that this is a snippet of the rainforest, that it's a vast smorgasbord of plant material and animals. And this is just to show that if we don't act now, we will lose it.
There's some real drama and creativity in the floral installations here, and it's great to see how florists and we can be more sustainable in our own displays.
In the Victorian era, gardening became a national obsession, and stumperies were a trend that really came to the fore. Now, the first stumpery in the UK was seen at Biddulph Grange in Staffordshire, and really they're a byproduct of the industrial age as they dug up train tracks and they had to dig up loads of trees. Sure, you can use the wood for timber, but the stumps, what do you do with those? Well, you make a garden feature from them. So what are they? Basically, they're a stump half buried into the ground. They're fantastic for wildlife, and then you plant around them. They're perfect for a shady part of the garden. And here on Tom Hoblin's garden, he's used them in a more contemporary way. In front of me, we've got a really nice big stump, and on top of it is a plant that looks like moss, but actually it's a tiny little fern, Selaginella. And then we've got a hosta and a disperum and some nice ferns dotted around as well, which adds a lovely rhythm to the space. So once you've dug your stump into the ground, and the bigger the better, remember, you've got to think about planting around it. Now, what sums up a bit of Victoriana? Well, ferns. And here on Alchemy Ferns, just look at this, a textural tapestry of greens. There's some real beauties on here. This is one of my favourites. It grows in damp shade, dry shade. You can plant it under trees. This is Polysticum setiferum Herrenhausen. And ferns are around 300 million years old. They don't reproduce by flowering and producing seed. They reproduce by having spores on the bottom of their leaves, and they spread out and slowly colonize areas. And another one that would work really nicely alongside that is that one behind it, Ethereum Felix Femina Frizelia. It's got a different silhouette, a slightly different texture. And when you're planting with ferns, that's what you're thinking about, texture rather than colour. But if you really want to splash out, you want one of these. This is Dicksonia antarctica, the hardiest tree fern. And it comes pretty much with its own stumpery itself. And in milder areas, it doesn't need protection, but in colder areas, just fold in those fronds through the winter and that'll protect the crown. So what goes with ferns? Hostas, of course, both great for shade. Now, depending on the size of the stumpery you're making, you'll always find a hosta that works with that scale. And here on Sienna Hosta stand, they've got the full range. From the tiny little blue mouse ears next to me, I love this one, to the Vulcan, one of the larger foliage plants. Now, a variegated hosta is going to really light up a dark area, and you can't go wrong with combining those together too. So there you go, stumperies, so easy to make. They're fabulous for wildlife, and just a few choice plants, and you've got a wonderful feature.
In a moment, I'm going to be joined by Jasper Conran, the award-winning fashion designer who's dressed everyone, from royalty to the Royal Ballet. But he's also passionate about his garden. And before we meet him, let's take a visit to that glorious garden in rural Dorset.
This garden is, for me, everything. I come out in the morning and I see the sun rising, and it's magical. My name's Jasper Conran, and I'm a designer of several things. I design clothes, I design theatre, ballet, I design interiors. I'm a designer. We're in West Dorset, in my home. The house sits in the middle of its own land, so we have about 70 acres here. It's a 1620 manor house, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I would definitely say that my inclination is more towards a cottage garden. It's an exaggerated cottage garden, if you will. So we're on the south side of the house, and here we've got 4 large beds. Asparagus. There we go. The first asparagus. Because of the forget-me-nots, it's like an Easter egg hunt trying to find the asparagus. Ah, it's time for the rhubarb. This is the first of the rhubarb. You can't get prettier than that, in my view. This house used to belong to my stepmother, so I've known it for about 30 years. At one point she decided to sell it, and I thought, no, got to jump in. It would be terrible for it to leave the family. Gardening's really important to me. It's been my main sort of form of relaxation through my life. I did start off with my own little vegetable patch in my father's garden, and my stepmother is a wonderful gardener. And so I grew up with lovely gardens, and to me it's the rewarding thing, apart from eating and drinking, that one can do. This is in the old walled garden. I try to make the garden feel as if it's part of the rest of the landscape, not too divorced from what's going on around it. I don't really think that my designing clothing informs the garden, or really vice versa. When I put my gardening hat on, I put my gardening hat on. When I put my design hat on, my working world is quite cut and thrust. It's quite brutal at times. So this is a very gentle respite from that. There are gardeners that I admire tremendously, Dan Pearson in particular. I think probably he has an influence on me. Obviously, Monty Don is a genius. I don't do all the gardening myself. I've got a full-time job. This is Midori. Midori comes all the way from Japan.
To change career.
Midori does all the front
only.
gardens and all the
Kitchen
vegetable kitchen gardens. You know what, Midori? You know the parsley with the root?
Do you like?
Absolutely delicious.
Is it?
So I'd like to plant more. If you've got space, I do plant things. I do get shovels and things out. But quite often they have to be replanted behind my back. But I try. I think this is a place that all my family love, and it's got special meaning for all of them. This place is the place that's closest to my heart and my soul. I think that you can feel at one with yourself and the world in such a place. That's how I feel about it.
That does look like a dream garden. And Jasper is here with me now. Hello, Jasper.
Hi.
Have you had a chance to look around the show?
I have.
What have you seen?
Well, I've seen all the gardens, which I really love, actually. The planting I find charming and romantic and just right up my street. And then I've seen the tent, where I really love the massed foxgloves and the massed clematis, you know.
I mean, seeing the film of your garden,
Yeah.
clearly, what the cottage garden style, just a little bit off beam.
Nudged.
Yes, I mean, you say in the film that you don't bring your design work to it; you keep them separate. You know, gardening is in one pocket, but clearly there's a lot of design skill in achieving that end.
Well, I mean, I don't know about skill, but I do think about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and I choose all the plants and I choose the seeds, and so yes, it's intentional, unintentional. I mean, my favorite things are, when things go to, they just scatter themselves everywhere. So it's, with the
Well, I love the idea of picking the asparagus through the forget-me-nots. It's a wonderful thing. Do you think that it's necessary to know the names of plants and sort of know exactly how they grow in order to grow them well and in order to love them?
No, I definitely don't. I mean, from my own experience, I got a very short memory, so I go through I choose what I like, and then by the time it's arrived, I've completely forgotten its name. So we have to do it. But I don't really think so. I think it's about you're dealing with something visual. You either like it or you don't.
I mean, you've been a designer all your life.
Yes.
And so your world has been visual.
Yes.
When you go around a show like this, are you analysing it with your designer's brain or just absorbing it with your gardener's love?
With my gardener's love.
Right.
I think with my gardener's love, and I think I'm thinking, why haven't I done that?
Right.
That's a good idea. I mean, this is the joy of this show, is that you do get ideas, marvelous ones.
I think that's the most important part of the show.
Yeah,
actually, definitely. There was something you said in the film which I thought was fascinating, is this idea of place, of not just a garden and a house and, one can chop and change them and all the rest, but knowing somewhere as a place that you belong to and it belongs to you.
Yes.
And it becomes your rooted spot on this planet.
Yes. And the place that you long to be.
Yes.
Yes, I think that, you know, in creating a garden and creating that place, and, you know, and it is about, you know, how you know, the way you choose plants, the way you, what you want and how it's going to look is a sort of self-expression. It is so much rooted in your own psyche, I suppose.
It's an act of creativity too. Right?
Yeah,
It's very personal creativity.
And it's a continual act of creativity throughout the year.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, that's the great thing about it. They never stay the same.
Well,
they always change.
They never stay the same. What I love about it is that, you know, accidents happen, and things seed themselves everywhere, and you wake up and there's something you didn't mean to happen, but is wonderful.
Well, I think your garden looks wonderful. Thank you
you
very much for coming here and talking to us. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Now, this week we've been marking 70 years of the Queen's reign and, of course, her 7 decades of support for the RHS Chelsea Flower Show. Last night we enjoyed seeing the popular plants that were at Chelsea in 1952, and tonight Rachel fast forwards to the Silver Jubilee in 1977.
It's 1977 and the country is celebrating 25 years of the Queen's reign. Record-breaking crowds line the streets for her Silver Jubilee tour, and there are hijinks and sing-songs at street parties across the land. Away from all the flag-waving, rebellion is in the air as the punk scene bursts into life on London's King's Road. Yet, just around the corner at the Chelsea Flower Show, it's business as usual, with Middle England descending on the showground in their thousands. Gardening favourite Peter Seabrook treats visitors at home to a riot of colour, from 70s favourites carnations, clematis, orchids and hydrangeas. Bedding is big and in glorious technicolor as Her Majesty the Queen admires a huge floral crown and a carpet display of 7,000 plants created in honour of the Jubilee. And it wouldn't be the 70s without lots of classic hybrid tea roses, including a special one to mark the occasion.
Roses that everybody, of course, will be looking for are Silver Jubilee, lovely silvery pink.
70s gardeners wanted to make a splash, from statement waterfalls to flashy deck chairs to show off to the neighbours. Something I think we all secretly still love to do 45 years on.
So lovely to see Peter Seabrook there, who sadly died earlier this year and is very much missed. This display is dedicated to him. There are his boots and some clothes there, some of his garden tools. Look at that, the trowel. It's actually incredibly moving to sit here. And there are even some of the plants here from his own garden, like the honeysuckle and the iris. It's really lovely. In the 1970s, bedding was all about blocks of solid primary colours. So red geraniums, actually pelargoniums, lobelia in blue, and then white alyssum. And it would be planted in a carpet fashion. You couldn't see any soil at all. It was incredibly popular with parks departments and public gardens at the time because it was fairly easy to install and low maintenance once it was installed, bright and colourful right the way through the summer, and actually not too expensive at the time. And you had things like, well, the coleus for the foliage colour, mixed in with marigolds, all sorts of really traditional bedding plants. But tastes have changed, and a lot of the bedding that we used to see on roundabouts and in our parks has now been replaced by shrubs and perennials, things that are a bit more long-lasting. But there is still a place for that beautiful bedding. And the Birmingham City Council display, which is celebrating that city's hosting of the Commonwealth Games this summer, is really showing us the way to do it. So you've got some of those traditional plants still very much in here. There are marigolds through this whole area. But here, they're dotted in amongst other things. So you've got the osteospermum, you get interesting colour blends, and the carex, grasses in bedding, but used just dotted all the way through it. And there's shrubs here too, so the pittosporum with the lovely curling leaf, you've got hydrangeas and all sorts of other things just popping up. The antirrhinums, you've got dahlias. It's a lovely riotous mix. This display brilliantly encapsulates a nod to tradition, but it also very firmly points towards the future.
In 1977, I was 12. I do remember I was just sort of getting interested in punk and rock music. Wasn't really into the garden at that age.
Well, I was 22, I was a mature student at university, and I was working as a jobbing gardener to get me through university. So most weekends I was mowing lawns, I was digging gardens and cutting hedges,
nice.
And then going back to my studies.
Lovely, making all your mistakes in other people's gardens first. Good move, Monty. Well, still to come this evening from the RHS Chelsea Flower Show, an event supported by the Newt in Somerset. Adam Frost is back with his guide to design, and tonight he has tips on making our gardens a haven for wildlife.
And we will be meeting a grower who's beaten the odds to bring her stunning display of Camasias to the show.
But now all week we've been revealing the brand new plants making their debut at the show. Carol is here with 3 more cultivars that could be soon taking root in your garden.
I love discovering new plants, and there's nowhere better to find them than in the Great Pavilion. Most of us are familiar with our native thrift. It grows on the cliffs at the seaside. Well, this is a version of it. This is Armeria, Sudarmeria Dreamland. It's a brand new plant. Normally the flowers of thrift are sort of purpley pink, but this has no blue or purple in them at all. It's just hugely sort of rosy and pretty. It's gorgeous. Being a seaside plant, it loves really good drainage, and it also adores full sun. I'm told that this plant flowers right the way through the season, from March way into September, October. It's used here as a container plant, and that's another brilliant way of using it. Let me introduce you to Franz Gold, this beautiful new iris that's from Bernkoos Nurseries. Now, it was found 20 years ago, just a single shoot, this lovely golden foliage growing in an Irish garden. Since then, it's been grown on and showed no sign of reverting to plain green again. So it's a really distinctive plant. The gold's especially beautiful if it's growing in full sun. An Iris sibirica, I know I could grow at home in my heavy clay soil. It absolutely loves damp soil too. You can grow it as a marginal beside your pond. And the crowning glory, of course, is these beautiful pale blue flowers with the really delicate markings on the fall. It really is glorious. Geranium pratense is one of our most loved wildflowers. You often see it growing amongst grass on the verges of roads. It's a delight, but this is a brand new version of that plant. It's called Geranium pratense Stormcloud, and it's got these very, very dark, rich crimson leaves, which, I'm told, when they're out in the sun, become even darker. Another perfect foil for these small, dainty blue flowers. You can see from this flower that there are extra petals. It's actually a semi-double flowered form, and that means that it doesn't set any seed at all. And hopefully it'll soon be available so we can all try it in our beds and borders. Tomorrow, Francis will be revealing 3 more new exciting varieties before announcing the winner of the prestigious RHS Plant of the Year Award. I just can't wait to see who that's going to be.
Chelsea might be the catwalk for hot new cultivars, but it's also a place to recognise the joy of tradition, skill and patience, all of which you need if you're diving into the mysterious world of bonsai.
What do you know about bonsai?
Very little.
When people say, what is the art behind bonsai? I think it's very much a case of understanding what trees are doing in nature and, in effect, replicating those trees in miniature. They can almost be seen as sculptures, the way some are created. My name's Malcolm Hughes. I'm a past chairman of the Federation of British Bonsai Societies and a past chairman of the Friends of the National Bonsai Collection. I've been involved with bonsai for some 45 years.
And I'm his wife, Kath, and most definitely his better half. I've been in bonsai for exactly the same length of time as Malcolm.
Kath and I met at a time when I was a lecturer. She was a student. I have to say that whilst they were a nice group, there was a somewhat disruptive element in it. And I'm afraid that this lady was the ringleader.
Possibly be me. I enjoyed it. Good company.
They were a nice crowd, yes.
You were, weren't you? What people must remember is that bonsai are fundamentally trees.
Basically, you're talking about having a tree in miniature in a shallow pot. If you were to take them out of the pot, plant them in the ground, then gradually they would build up to fully grown, mature trees, as you'd see in the countryside.
That means that we've got to trim it all the time.
The pruning process is really to keep the tree in shape. Anything that you wanted to extend, then you would, with fine wire, take it down into a position and not allow that to be cut back too far. With bonsai, watering is an essential element of keeping them alive and healthy. In the winter months, it might only be a case of having to look to water them maybe once a week. Otherwise, when it gets to the spring, then you could be watering certainly twice, if not 3 times a day. Here we have our collection. It's nice to think that a few of these have been submitted for Chelsea in the past, and this is probably the oldest tree we have, Acer palmatum sagen. It's getting on for 125 years. As an Acer, you'll find it's probably one of the more popular species that you have in bonsai. This is quite an interesting specimen, to say the least. Over here we have Pinus sylvestris, the Scots pine. This is what's called the semi-cascade style, where the tree is coming out over the edge of a ledge. Of course, with bonsai, a lot of people associate it with Japan, with China, the Far East, but there are a vast range of native species, and Scots pine, as an evergreen variety, is one of the popular ones. This year is a particularly exciting time for the Federation because we're now preparing for the Chelsea Flower Show. This particular tree is a strong contender for selection, so I'm now taking it to the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, and we will be looking at this and a selection of other trees for the event. Now, the gardens here house some of the best collection of bonsai in the country, so hopefully we'll have some to select for Chelsea. Morning, Peter.
Hi, Malcolm.
One tree, there we go. One of the Scots pines I think we might consider for Chelsea. Do you feel it's a possibility?
Well, yes. I mean, as we're saying, it's a collected tree. It's a Yamadori, very natural curve. I think it is a very strong possibility to be shown.
This is a particularly interesting tree because it's actually hemlock. There's not many hemlock trees in bonsai. It was rescued from a landfill site in 1998. Since then it's been trained to become what it is now. It's up for selection for the Chelsea stand this year. It would have been 80 foot underground by now because the landfill site is now a 100 foot high hill.
We've got half a dozen, if not more, trees ready to select from here. Each tree's been looked at as an entity in its own right, but then the whole stand is being assessed, isn't it,
well,
at
yes.
the end of the day?
But also remember that because there's no additional bits, there's no frills and whatever, the trees stand alone as individual items. Any errors do stand out very
like
much
a sore thumb.
Yeah.
So in order not to drop any points in the marking system, everything has got to be absolutely precise.
We want the balance in terms of colour, height,
Variety
of species, a mix of styles.
Mix of styles.
Okay, I think
We're about there, aren't we?
we're almost there.
And here we are on the exhibit, and it looks stunning. The varieties of heights and forms and colours just woven through there. And I have to say, anyone who builds a garden out there for 3 weeks is always jealous of the bonsai exhibits, because a couple of days before the show opens, they come along with their pots and place them beautifully and arrange them and then tweak. But you know, it's a simple way to create something really stunning. Now here we've got a hawthorn in full flower behind me. That's about 50 years old and it looks absolutely gorgeous. We've got this little cherry plum in front of me, and all the bonsai fruit trees will have fruit exactly the same size as if it was a big tree, a real tree. And over there we have the hemlock that made it to the show, and it's looking absolutely stunning. You know, there's something really intriguing about bonsai. You could stand here for hours and look at the intricacies. Absolutely gorgeous. Got another gold medal, of course, so well done then.
One of the features of nearly all the big gardens nowadays are giant trees craned in by huge machines, and they're all part of the drama and display of a show garden. The trees work with mankind and each other on so many different levels. Let's start with their uses. For example, here in the RNLI garden, these pines and the coppice elms represent the wood that the lifeboats were built on. Trees, we're increasingly learning, are a vital part of carbon capture to moderate climate change. They absorb vast amounts of water from floodplains. Now that's all above ground. We can see all that happen. But underground, there is a whole world of complex interaction between trees and other organisms, and between trees and each other, that we're only just beginning to learn. This is the metagarden, Growing the Future, and it exists to try and illustrate that world that is happening underground, beneath and around and amongst the roots of trees, because it's all fungal. Fungi are this magic element that are enabling trees to thrive, to survive, and also, extraordinarily, to communicate with each other. Now, it begins with mycorrhizal fungi, and as gardeners, we've been using this for the last 20 years or so. The mycorrhizal fungi take sugars from the roots of the tree, and that nourishes them. And the tree uses the fungi almost as an extension of its roots. And different trees can access those same filaments of the fungi and can use it not just to grow and to feed, but also to communicate. Now, this extraordinary connection, which has been called the Wood Wide Web, is obviously going on underground and we can't see it. But what this garden has attempted to do with great creativity is to portray it so that we get some kind of insight into what's going on. Okay, I'm now underground. I'm in amongst the fungi and the roots of the trees. And if I cut through those roots, they make a hexagon shape. And that's why the hexagon has been used here, and that's why this structure uses hexagons. Because when the fungi enters the cellular structure of the tree, it forms itself a hexagon shape. And what you have is this very close relation, they almost become one, between fungus and tree. So if we use fungicides to blast what we think of as bad fungus, we are doing far more harm than any possible good. What we have to do is be humble about this, learn about it, and try and encourage a healthy environment that uses and needs fungus in order that our beautiful trees can thrive. Now, you may think that this only applies if you've got woodlands or a big garden or a big show garden. That's not the case. It applies to all trees. If you've got a window box, a roof garden, every tree on this planet is connected in this way and can contribute, be it with carbon capture or fungal level, to everything. So plant a tree, look after it, and it will look after you.
Now, Adam is back with his series on designing with plants. Today he's been looking at how we can use soft landscaping and plant choices to make our gardens as welcoming as possible for wildlife.
This week we've looked at planting to help with privacy, to provide all-important calm. And now we're going to look at plants that help attract wildlife into your garden. Our gardens are becoming really precious things. But I think when it comes to wildlife gardening, so many of us think, yeah, but that's going to be scruffy, isn't it? And that's not really what I want. But actually, in reality, that doesn't have to be. This garden's a prime example. It's simple, it's beautiful, and as I look around it, it's built on layers. And I'm looking over there. I've got this sort of arona, a chokeberry. Provides really good early flower, followed by a berry. And then for us, superb autumn colour. So that really provides through the season. Currants, we grow edible currants, we grow ornamental currants. Why not just grow the ornamentals? Pick some for yourself and then leave some to share. So really, in reality, what it is just thinking about individual pieces and what they're bringing to the party. What about this? It's absolutely stunning. It's an ornamental meadow, and the grasses create a really calm carpet. And then we've got pops of colour. Again, they're simple flowers. We've got poppies, we've got bacteria, we've got things like centranthus. They're all things that pollinators really love. I think we all know how important water is to wildlife. Well, what I like here is the way the little feature just banks itself up, and then the planting all around the edge. You can imagine the wildlife just taking themselves and hiding away. But what about the winter? This is when I think that sometimes we are just a little bit too tidy. Me, I say just back off. Leave it until end of February, end of March. So think about not just how you put your gardens together, but how you maintain them. I think this garden demonstrates that wildlife gardening can be fun. The colours in here just pop. And I think as we move forward, these urban spaces are just so precious. This garden demonstrates you don't need to have a huge amount of space. There's a container there just in front of me. And you know the wildlife are just going to be drawn to it. So I think, in reality, moving forward, how we put our gardens together, incredibly important. Add that diversity, thinking about wildlife. But also, maybe just back off a little bit. Don't be so tidy with what's outside your back door.
As we saw there, naturalistic planting is as popular as ever. Loose arrangements of grasses mixed with beautiful perennial flowers, and becoming increasingly popular in these kind of gardens are Camasias. In a moment, I'll meet Camassia grower Stella Exley. But first, let's find out more about her nursery and the rocky journey she's taken to make it to Chelsea.
So Hairspring Cottage Plants was established about 12 years ago. I have not always been a horticulturalist. I retrained. I finally escaped my career in local government to do it. In my wildest dreams, I wouldn't have thought I could exhibit at Chelsea. I knew I'd got the ability and the passion, but it was just pulling all that together without the experience. So at the nursery, I grow a wide range of hardy perennials. I've got 3 national plant collections, but Camassia are my first love. I've been growing and collecting Camassia for over 20 years. This is Camassia leclinii Blue Danube, one of my favourite cultivars. If you give them lots of moisture, they'll be so happy. So September to November is the ideal time to plant the bulbs, and then they flower sort of mid-April onwards. So they're going to be absolutely perfect for Chelsea Flower Show at the end of May. You can use them in a plethora of planting schemes, from mixed herbaceous borders to woodland edges, naturalising meadows, rewilding areas. Camassia fit that bill. So since I first exhibited at Chelsea in 2016, I've been really excited about getting Camassia on the worldwide stage that is Chelsea. So I first met Chris Beardshaw in 2014. He asked me to grow Camassia for him for one of his show gardens at Chelsea. Chris, being passionate about Camassia himself, has helped raise the profile. The first few years at Chelsea Flower Show were just superb. The last few years, however, have been incredibly challenging and quite tricky. In 2019, partway through building my exhibit, I fell and broke both wrists. Some very kind-hearted exhibitors finished building my exhibit for me, but I was absolutely heartbroken. I couldn't be at the show that year. When the pandemic hit, all the shows were cancelled, obviously. Like many other exhibitors, I'd got a nursery full of absolutely stunning plants waiting to go to the shows. And if all that wasn't enough to deal with, I had a stroke last year. So my two daughters, Hayley and Harriet, have been a tower of strength over recent years.
I'm Harriet. I am the youngest daughter, definitely the favourite daughter. I've been helping build at Chelsea every year that she's been there, actually, and it's been such a wonderful, wild adventure together.
Hayley can't be with us all the time. She's in America. But she just plays a really, really important role keeping social media ticking over and marketing, things that I just wouldn't have the time to do. So I'm blessed, I'm really blessed. So the plan at Chelsea this year is we're introducing for the first time our fully restored Morris Minor van. Her name's Willow, and we're creating on our display in the pavilion at Chelsea like a little country lane. And so Willow, the Morris, is going to be as if she's travelling down that lane. One of the Camassia cultivars I'm hoping to include in our exhibit is Camassia leclinii Silk River.
So what makes this cultivar different or special from the rest of your collection?
So this is brand new. It's never been seen at Chelsea before. And it flowers later, so I'm really, really hoping that it will come in time for Chelsea for us. I'd be so excited.
Oh wow, Mama, these are looking fabulous. Are these your gold medal?
Gold medal, absolutely,
Gold.
hands down, gold medal, yeah. I'm so excited to be back at Chelsea Flower Show this year and really hoping that I don't have any more accidents, any more broken bones. And the Camassia flower and are absolutely stunning. And of course I'll have my daughter Harriet by my side helping me bring that exhibit together.
One thing I've discovered in all my years at Chelsea is that there are many ways that a nurseryman or woman can approach creating a pavilion display. And boy, has Stella delivered. Congratulations, Stella. It looks absolutely fantastic. Really showing off your huge range of Camassias. But actually, I'm interested in all the plants that you've kind of mixed into the blend here.
Okay, so we grow a wide range of hardy perennials on the nursery in North Yorkshire. It's the colour palette I really love, the soft, muted colour palette. I'm not so keen on screamy colours. So there's the movement, there's the height, there's the texture, form.
And I guess all of these plants are kind of wanting to grow in fairly similar moist conditions to the Camassias.
Most of them do. Part shade, dapple shade, transient shade, absolutely, yes.
Now, how did your build go? Have your wrists survived this time?
Yes, 2019, as you know, I broke both hands during my build at Chelsea. They have very achy and tired, as is all my body, but yes, it survived. Yes,
that's the nature of the build. But your daughters have been helping you?
My eldest daughter is in Los Angeles, California, so she does all the social media marketing. My youngest daughter, Harriet, has been here for the whole build, 5 full days, yes.
Brilliant. Now, the big question is, did Camassia Silk River make it to the show?
It did, it really did. It's brand new cultivar, first time ever at Chelsea, creamy white, plain green foliage, shorter in stature, and it's here by the bench.
It's a beautiful looking thing. Well, congratulations, you've got a silver gilt, and this just looks spectacular.
Thank you very much, Nick. Much appreciated.
Now we have just enough time for a few of your questions. Ask Monty and Joe. AJT asks, 5th year of trying to make a wildflower meadow close to woodland, but sadly overtaken by just buttercups and big grasses despite numerous wildflower seeds. Any advice?
Well, the key to a wildflower meadow is your management. So I think the first thing they have to do is treat it like a hay meadow, which means not cutting it at all until, I would say, July, and preferably the middle of July. Then cut it as short as they possibly can, take everything away.
Yeah, you've got to reduce the fertility.
Absolutely. Lots of bare soil. Sow yellow rattle.
Yeah.
Which
is
beautiful.
The wild card, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yellow rattle is the meadow maker.
Yeah.
But because there are lots of buttercups, it sounds quite damp. So you want a damp mix. And then they can cut it as short as they like for the rest of the summer.
Yeah.
Mow it if they want to, like a lawn.
Yeah. But keep taking it away.
Yeah. And then let it go into winter short. And they can add bulbs in if they want.
Yeah, bulbs,
and then don't cut it at all until next year. And gradually, it will establish its own ecosystem.
It's going to take a while.
I would say 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
But the important thing is to weaken the grass.
Yeah, okay. Is there a trick to getting wisteria to grow? Marcy Ford asks. We have 3 in different positions and different sizes, all bought in flower. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Buying in flower means you know it's going to flower at some point. Been planted 2 to 4 years, but all seem to struggle. Everything around them doing well. Well, you know, wisterias need plenty of sun, as much sun, south-facing wall ideally.
Yeah.
If you buy them in flower, they're usually grafted, which I always do now.
Yeah.
And then pruning. You know, pruning in February, you cut them hard back to 2 or 3 buds.
2 or 3 buds, yeah.
And then in the summer, try and reduce that whippy growth.
They flower on new growth.
Yeah.
So you need to establish a framework, then cut off all the new growth, and give them a chance. I mean, wisterias traditionally could take 7 years to get going, get established. I've got one that is slow to get going. So be patient.
Okay, Sylvia Horn asks, I do have a question. Oh, that's good, Sylvia.
If it helps.
I've spent the last 2 years trying to get my streptocarpus to flower. The first 2 years it did flower, but although I'm feeding it and I've moved it to different locations in the room, it no longer does. Any advice, please?
Well, I would cut back on the feeding to start with, because feeding will encourage leaves rather than flowers. They love moist shade, so what you've got to do is spray the air, keep them in shade, and give them a rest period when they can dry out for a couple of months.
I think I've got a bit of streptocarpus. Now, good advice. So, now, don't forget, you can send us your questions via Twitter at GWN Shows using the hashtag AskMontyandJoe or on our Facebook page.
Well, that's it for this evening. Angelica and Nikki will be back tomorrow on BBC One at 3:45 in the afternoon.
And your votes are in, so join Sophie and I on BBC One tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. when we announce your winner of the BBC RHS People's Choice Award 2022. Exciting!
Calm down, steady now. And then we will both be back here at 8 o'clock on BBC Two when I'll be catching up with Charlene Spiteri from the band Texas. Till then, bye-bye.